Have you ever seen a man go cold on you? Not because he stopped loving you, but because something inside him shut down. You didn't scream. You didn't betray him. You just said something, maybe during an argument, maybe casually, that bruised his ego. And suddenly, he's distant, withdrawn, like a wall just went up overnight. What you're experiencing isn't rejection. It's ego defense. Because here's a truth no one tells you. Men don't fall in love through logic. They fall in love through how you make them feel about themselves when they're around you. And when that feeling takes a hit, when a man's sense of pride or masculinity feels threatened, he doesn't know how to process it. So he disconnects, not because he stopped caring, but because he doesn't know how to feel safe loving you again. But here's where it gets powerful, and this is where most women get it wrong. You don't need to beg, chase, or over-apologize. You don't need to over-explain or prove how much you care. What you need is to tap into a psychological shift, a secret that makes a man feel emotionally safe even after his ego was bruised. A shift that reignites his respect for you without lowering your worth. In this video, I'll show you how to turn the most fragile moments in a relationship into magnetic connection, so he not only forgives, but falls deeper in love with the woman who knows how to reach him where no one else can. Ready to understand the male mind from the inside out? Let's dive in. Let's talk about something that frustrates and confuses so many women. Why men's egos seem so fragile. You say something that you think is harmless. Maybe you make a joke, offer a suggestion, or express frustration, and suddenly he's shutting down, snapping back, or pulling away like he's been deeply wounded. It feels disproportionate, but to him it's very real. Here's the truth most people don't understand. A man's ego isn't just about arrogance or pride. It's deeply tied to his sense of identity, especially how he sees himself in the eyes of the woman he loves. From childhood, most men are taught that they need to be strong, right, capable, and in control. The moment that image is even slightly threatened, especially by someone they're emotionally vulnerable with, it hits on a subconscious level. It's not about the words you said, it's about what those words meant to him in the context of his masculinity. For example, when you say, "I wish you were more like," or "Why can't you just understand," even if you're expressing a need, what he often hears is, "I'm not good enough. I failed. I'm not her hero anymore." That thought doesn't just hurt, it challenges the foundation of how he sees himself in the relationship. And unlike women, who often process emotions by talking them through, men tend to internalize and withdraw when they feel emotionally threatened. Their first instinct isn't connection, it's protection. That's why ego wounds can create such distance in a relationship, because instead of softening, many men go silent. They retreat into themselves, not to punish you, but to preserve a fragile part of their identity they don't fully understand. The good news, once you understand this emotional blueprint, you can respond in a way that honors both your truth and his need for dignity. You don't have to walk on eggshells, you just have to speak in a language his heart can actually hear. And in the next chapter, I'll show you the critical mistake most women make in these moments that accidentally pushes him further away, even when your intentions are full of love. When a man's ego is hurt, many women instinctively want to fix things right away. It's natural. When someone you love pulls away, your first reaction is to close the gap, to reassure him that everything's okay, to apologize and smooth things over. But here's the hard truth. This well-meaning response often backfires. It's the critical mistake most women make, and it's one of the main reasons the distance grows instead of shrinking. Why does this happen? Because when you rush to apologize or over-explain, you unintentionally send a message that you don't fully respect yourself. And a man's attraction is deeply connected to how much respect and confidence he senses from you. When you beg for his attention or forgiveness, no matter how gently or lovingly, it triggers a subtle loss of attraction on his part. Instead of feeling drawn closer, He feels like the balance of power is shifting away from him, and that only makes him pull back further to protect his pride. Another mistake is trying to logically explain or defend your actions, hoping he'll understand and forgive. But here's the catch. Men don't usually operate on logic when it comes to ego wounds. They respond to emotional signals and energy. The more you try to prove yourself right or justify your words, the more it feels like a challenge to his masculinity. So rather than opening up, he shuts down. This doesn't mean you should never apologize or communicate, far from it. What you do need to learn is how to communicate in a way that keeps his emotional safety intact, while still honoring your own feelings and boundaries. The key is to balance vulnerability with strength, to show you're confident enough to hold your ground, but compassionate enough to understand his emotional experience. When you master this balance, you stop the cycle of misunderstanding and you stop triggering his defense mechanisms, and instead become someone he naturally wants to come back to because he feels respected, admired, and safe with you. In the next part, I'll reveal exactly what this emotional balance looks like, and the subtle shifts you can make to turn tension into deep connection. When a man's ego has been hurt, it's not enough to simply say, "I'm sorry," or try to fix things the way you might with a friend. What actually makes a man reconsider you, what pulls him back from that emotional distance, is much more subtle and complex. It's not about chasing or convincing him, it's about shifting how he feels about himself when he's with you. Here's the core of it. Men don't just fall back in love because you changed your words or actions. They reconsider because something inside them shifts. A feeling that being with you once again boosts their sense of worth and pride. It's about rekindling that internal fire where he sees himself as the man he wants to be, reflected in your eye. When his ego is bruised, he's questioning that reflection. He wonders, am I still the man she respects? Does she still see me as strong, capable, and worthy of her love? What makes him rethink and open his heart is when you stop trying to repair the damage by force and instead create space for him to feel respected and admired again. This means stepping into your feminine power, not by lowering yourself or begging, but by holding your ground calmly and confidently. When you respond to his withdrawal with steady, unwavering self-respect, you send a powerful signal you value yourself enough not to tolerate disrespect, but you also value him enough to give him the room to heal. Another key factor is your energy. Men are deeply tuned to energy, often more than words. When you maintain a calm, warm, and positive energy, one that's centered in your own worth and joy, it naturally draws him back. It's like an emotional magnet that says, here is a woman who doesn't need to chase, but who loves herself and the connection enough to hold space for him. This creates emotional safety, the exact place he needs to step back into love. It's important too to engage him in a way that respects his masculinity. This means letting him feel he's still the hero in the story. When you show appreciation for his strengths, acknowledge his efforts, even small ones, and avoid putting him on the defensive, you reawaken his desire to protect, provide, and emotionally invest. Instead of feeling criticized or diminished, he feels respected and motivated to show up more fully. Patience plays a crucial role here as well. A man reconsidering his feelings often needs time to process and rebuild trust, not rushed, but naturally growing. If you try to force closeness too soon, it will push him away again. Instead, focus on nurturing your own life and happiness, demonstrating that your value isn't dependent on his approval. When you combine all these elements, steadfast self-respect, positive energy, appreciation, and patience, you tap into the psychological and emotional triggers that make a man reconsider the love and respect he has for you. He starts to see you not just as someone he wants to be with, but as the woman he respects deeply and feels proud to love. In the next section, I'll break down how feminine energy plays a vital role in this process and why it's the secret weapon many women overlook. One of the biggest turning points in how a man sees you after conflict isn't found in the number of times you say, "I'm sorry." It's found in your energy, specifically your feminine energy. This is where most women unknowingly sabotage their chances of reconnecting. They think that by apologizing repeatedly or over-explaining their side, they'll be able to repair the bond. But in reality, that energy creates the opposite effect. It often makes a man feel pressured, cornered, or even less respect for the relationship. Let's get one thing clear. An authentic, heartfelt apology is powerful, but only when it's aligned with self-worth. The moment you start over-apologizing, especially when you haven't actually done something wrong or when you're apologizing just to soothe his discomfort, you're slipping into a dynamic that says, I'll shrink myself to earn your approval. That energy might sound loving, but what it really communicates is fear and insecurity, and men are highly sensitive to that. On the other hand, feminine energy operates completely differently. It's not about convincing or fixing. It's about holding your emotional truth while staying open, grounded, and receptive. When a woman stands in her feminine energy, she communicates through presence, softness, and self-respect. And this creates something magical. It makes a man feel invited, not pressured. He feels drawn back to you because you're not trying to control his response. You're simply standing in your own emotional power with grace. A woman in her feminine doesn't beg to be forgiven. She might express regret or vulnerability, but it comes from a place of love, not desperation. She knows that if a man truly values the connection, he'll feel the sincerity in her energy and naturally be moved to come closer. This difference is subtle but massive. When you apologize too much, you're handing him your power. You're trying to manage his emotions at the expense of your own peace. But when you embrace feminine energy, you reclaim that power. You say, I care deeply and I'm open to connection, but I won't abandon myself to chase it. This isn't about manipulation. It's about emotional alignment. When you align with your feminine energy, your words, tone, and body language all send the same message. I'm emotionally secure. I'm not afraid of your distance, and I know my value, whether you're close to me or not. That's incredibly attractive to a man, especially when he's still working through wounded pride. Men are far more likely to reconsider, reconnect, and even initiate healing when they feel that they're not being pushed, but gently pulled by the warmth and softness of feminine strength. So the next time you're tempted to over-apologize, take a breath. Tap into your heart. Lead with warmth, not worry. That's the energy that invites love to return without. In the next chapter, we'll explore the exact psychological secret that reopens a man's heart after emotional damage has been done. There's a moment in every relationship where words aren't enough. The tension is thick. The silence is heavy. And no matter how much you try to explain or apologize, it feels like his heart is locked behind an emotional wall. This is the point where most women give up, or worse, start blaming themselves. But what if I told you there's a psychological secret that can melt that emotional wall without chasing, begging, or losing your self-respect? Here it is. Men open their hearts, not when you prove you love them, but when they feel emotionally safe being vulnerable around you. That's the secret. Emotional safety is the doorway to intimacy for a man who's been hurt, especially when his ego has taken a hit. And the way to create that safety is through a very specific emotional environment. One where he feels admired, not attacked. Where he feels free to express, not forced to explain. Where he feels respected, even in his silence. This doesn't mean you ignore your own feelings. It means you lead with emotional maturity. When you speak to him without judgment, even when you're hurt. When you express your needs without demanding a reaction. When you hold space for his processing without labeling him emotionally unavailable. You signal to his subconscious that you are not a threat to his identity. You're a safe place, and that's rare. That's magnetic. Men are often conditioned to suppress emotion. So the moment they sense that a woman can handle their silence or frustration without falling apart or pushing them to talk, they start to soften. Their defenses begin to lower because they're finally in the presence of someone who isn't trying to fix them, change them, or correct them, but who sees them and accepts them fully, even when they're imperfect. This shift doesn't happen through logic. It happens through energy. your calm tone, your open body language, your choice to respond with grounded compassion instead of emotional reactivity. These are the invisible signals that tell a man, you're still safe here, you're still respected, and I'm not going to punish you for needing space to come back to yourself. This psychological secret is especially powerful when he's feeling ashamed, misunderstood, or guilty for pulling away. Instead of attacking him or trying to make him talk, you show him through your presence that love doesn't have to be earned through perfection. That love can hold space for growth, healing, and reconnection. And when a man feels that kind of emotional safety, something incredible happens. His heart begins to reopen, not because he's pressured to, but because he wants to. He feels safe enough to return, to initiate conversation, to step back into closeness, not out of guilt, but out of genuine desire. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how to create that sense of emotional safety through your words and actions, so he not only reconnects, but feels drawn to protect, cherish, and love you all over again. Creating emotional safety for a man isn't about walking on eggshells or constantly filtering your emotions. It's about creating an environment through your words, your energy, and your presence where he feels like he can be fully himself without fear of judgment, criticism, or emotional punishment. That's what truly makes a man lean in. That's what gets him to drop his guard and show you the side of him he rarely shows anyone. So how do you actually trigger emotional safety? It starts with your energy. A calm, grounded woman who doesn't explode, accuse, or react impulsively creates a powerful emotional container. When a man feels that you can handle your own emotions without dumping them on him, he begins to relax. He senses that he's not responsible for your happiness, and that frees him to show up authentically, rather than defensively. Emotional safety also comes from the way you listen. Most people listen to respond. But when you listen to understand, you send the message that his emotions matter, even if he struggles to express them. When he says something that's vulnerable, and instead of correcting him or jumping in with your own feelings, you pause, you breathe, you reflect back what he said with compassion. That moment creates connection. It makes him feel heard, seen, and accepted. Another powerful tool is validation. This doesn't mean you agree with everything he says. It means you validate the fact that his emotions are real to him. You might say something like, I can see why that upset you, or I understand why you felt that way, even if it wasn't my intention. That subtle shift from defending yourself to validating his reality is often the difference between him shutting down and opening up. Tone is another major part of emotional safety. Your voice has energy. A gentle, warm tone, even when discussing something serious, can completely change how a man receives your message. It tells him, you're safe with me, we're on the same team, I'm not trying to win, I'm trying to connect. Boundaries also play a surprising role. You might think that having strong boundaries will push him away, but the opposite is true. When you calmly express your needs and limits without guilt or anger, he sees that you have self-respect, and that creates respect in return. Emotional safety doesn't mean letting everything slide. It means handling conflict with maturity and grace. Finally, trust your presence. When you sit beside him, not demanding anything, not rushing him to open up, but simply being there with loving, non-judgmental energy, you give him the space to come toward you. That's when the walls fall. That's when he starts sharing the thoughts he usually keeps to himself. Because in the end, a man doesn't fall deeply in love with the woman who gives the best speech. He falls for the woman who makes him feel like he can finally take off the emotional armor and still be fully loved. In the final section, I'll show you how to build a lasting connection that keeps growing, even after the hurt has passed. When it comes to winning a man back after his ego has been bruised, words matter, but not in the way most people think. It's not about crafting the perfect apology or trying to talk your way back into his heart. It's about how you communicate, what energy your words carry, what emotions they awaken in him, and whether they make him feel safe, respected, and drawn toward you again. The biggest mistake women make in these moments is saying too much, too soon. They pour out long texts, over-explain their intentions, or try to convince him how much they care. But when a man is emotionally withdrawn, that flood of words can feel overwhelming. even suffocating. It pushes him further into his shell, because it feels like pressure instead of connection. So what should you say? First, less is more. A short, calm message like, "I respect your space and I'm here when you're ready to talk," can be more powerful than an essay about your feeling. That kind of message shows maturity, confidence and emotional control, qualities that reignite a man's respect and curiosity. When you do speak, focus on sharing your truth, not your defense. You might say, "I realize now how that moment affected you, and I want you to know that wasn't my intention. I care about you and I'm open to hearing how you feel when you're ready." This communicates awareness, care, and emotional openness without pushing for a specific outcome. Avoid phrases that sound like blame or control, even if you're hurt. Saying things like, "You always shut down," "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this," or "If you really loved me, you'd talk to me," will only deepen the divide. Those statements challenge his emotional defenses and reinforce the ego wound. They make him feel misunderstood, not motivated to reconnect. Instead, lean into empathy. Even a simple statement like, "I can imagine that hurt you in a way I didn't see at the time," opens a door for him to share more. It makes you feel like an ally, not an adversary. And that shift from confrontation to connection is where healing begins. Also, don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Let your calm presence, your respectful distance, and your emotionally mature energy speak louder than any words. A man often reconsiders a woman not because of what she said, but because of how she made him feel during the silence. That's where his mind reflects, his heart softens, and the pull toward you begins again. Winning him back isn't about proving your worth. It's about reminding him of the emotional safety, warmth, and connection he felt when things were good, and letting him experience that again, not through pressure, but through presence. And remember, the right words don't just fix things, they invite love back in without ego, without fear, and without force. When it comes to love, real, lasting love, it's never just about chemistry, attraction, or even shared memories. It's about how you make someone feel over time. And if you've ever hurt a man's ego, whether intentionally or not, the real secret to keeping him loving you isn't about walking on eggshells or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about learning how to lead with emotional maturity, grace, and feminine strength. The kind that builds deeper connection instead of breaking it. As we close, here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Men stay deeply in love with women who make them feel respected, safe, and emotionally empowered. That doesn't mean you have to shrink yourself, silence your voice, or hide your emotions. It means you learn the dance between expressing your truth and honoring his need to feel like he matters. That emotional balance is what turns temporary attraction into lifelong devotion. So how do you keep him loving you, even after the hard moments, even after you've clashed or caused pain? You stay consistent in your energy. You don't allow fear to control your words. You give him the space to feel like a man while staying fully grounded in your own worth as a woman. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, and over-giving, and instead you offer presence, understanding, and invitation. The kind of love that lasts isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't prove. It simply is. It shows up. It listens. It gives space when needed and closeness when welcome. It respects the natural rhythm of two different people learning how to meet in the middle. And when you understand how to show up in that kind of love, especially after emotional tension, he doesn't just forgive you, he chooses you again. Not because you said all the right things, but because your presence felt like home. And here's a powerful truth. The more secure and grounded you are in yourself, the more you naturally draw out the best in him. A confident woman inspires a man to become a better version of himself, not through pressure, but through admiration, not through control, but through magnetism. So as you move forward, don't focus on trying to be perfect. Focus on being emotionally aligned. Speak your truth with softness. Hold your boundaries with love. Give him the freedom to return on his own. And when he does, welcome him with warmth, not judgment. That's how trust is rebuilt. That's how hearts stay open. And that's how love not only returns but grows stronger. You already have what it takes. The question is, are you willing to shift from fear to confidence, from chasing to attracting, from controlling to simply being? That's the real secret. That's what keeps a man loving you, not just now but always.